Hello, AP Psychology students. Welcome to part 2 of motivation. You might notice that I'm speaking really quickly on these videos, and that's because I want you to get through both of them for today's lesson. So we ended on this particular slide. I was just talking about the ventral medial hypothalamus and how damage to this can cause obesity. And the reason why is the student, or not the student, the individual who has damage in this part of the brain never feels full. So they constantly want to eat. And this is something that some people experience. It's very difficult for families. They really have to work hard on keeping the diet under control. And can you imagine how awful that would feel to feel hungry all the time? I really feel sorry for people in that situation. The set point theory is another important theory that has to do with hunger. So the hypothalamus regulates our body weight around a genetically predetermined level. This is the premise of the set point theory. And it's pretty obvious when you look at biologically related families that oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they have very similar builds. I've seen this over and over again with people who I've had multiple siblings from the same family. Some might be very, very muscular, very lean. Others are not so lean. And so there is an aspect of what our body weight is going to be that is genetically predetermined. However, there are some things that can affect that. Our basal metabolic rate is an important term to know, and this refers to the rate that our body uses calories. So, for example, on the back of boxes, they give you the ingredients and then the nutritive value of the food based on what they usually say is a 2,000 calorie diet. But I've heard of athletes that eat anywhere from 5 to 8,000 calories a day because of the intensity of their workout, and others need fewer than 2,000 calories a day because they do not use calories as quickly as others. So here is why dieting is such a vicious cycle. And if you've known anyone that's been through this, you have seen this cycle happen. So what happens is you diet, you reduce your calories. You're like, okay, I'm going to go from 2,000 to 1,500. That's about 500 calories less a day, and I should lose about a pound a week. But what happens is, especially if you do crash dieting, your body will go into a famine response. You're going to lose weight from your lean muscle and fat. Your metabolic rate is actually going to slow down. You fall off your diet because your body's just craving to get back to the weight that it was meant to be according to set point theory. And so then you feast, you gain back the weight, and you repeat, and you go through this cycle over and over again. And I certainly know people that have done that. Now, I do know people who have successfully lost weight. And I'm sure you've all heard the adage, you have to put out more than you're taking in, and it has to be done over a long period of time. You can't expect to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. It's not realistic, and even if you do it, it will come back quickly. For people that were on the show The Biggest Loser, by the way, if any of you have heard of that show, for many of them, their BMR slowed to the point where they could never go back to a normal rate of eating. Another thing that affects our weight is our fat cells. And this is an actual picture of a fat cell. Yeah, maybe not the best looking thing in the world, but the number of fat cells could come from a variety of factors. First of all, some of them just may be a result of heredity. Okay, this is what people in this family, this genetic line, this is how many fat cells they're born with. Early childhood overeating, however, can increase the number of fat cells that one has. And so therefore it's important to try to control early childhood overeating. And even adult overeating will cause an increase in fat cells. Once you acquire those fat cells, they can never be decreased. except for through a surgical procedure like liposuction, they can only be shrunk through diet and exercise. So keep that in mind. And again, if you're somebody who comes from a family that is just maybe larger than other families, try not to be too hard on yourself, because that just might be the way that you're meant to be. Not that you're not meant to be healthy. Of course, healthy eating is very important, um, but other factors play a role as well in our body size. We also, of course, have learned factors in eating. I've spent time in a variety of countries. For example, when I was in Denmark, I think it was in 2013, it was so interesting because the people there that I saw were all so healthy, but it seemed like they had food at the table all the time. Well, the thing was that they got up in the morning and they had a piece of cheese, a piece of bread, and a piece of meat, and that was it, and maybe some orange juice. Um, Other meals throughout the day were all very, very small portions, and they always ended the day with a little snack before bed. The portion size was the key, and that's the social cultural norm in um, in Denmark. Now, in other countries, the norm might be, large family gatherings with an abundance of food. And so we learn a lot about eating through modeling. If you grow up in a family where you're all kind of grabbing your own food, that's one kind of modeling. Maybe you're a family that goes out and gets fast food a lot. And so you get into these habits of eating. And again, if they're not healthy habits, you're going to have to uh, learn and research ways to eat more healthily. And we also know that eating does provide comfort because eating releases dopamine, and you know what dopamine does. Dopamine makes you feel happy. All right, here's a good question. Why do we eat dessert when we are full? Now, most people look at those tasty desserts and think, oh, wow, that one looks really good. Okay, now I'm not much of a sweet eater, but every once in a while, something like chocolate pie is just like, oh, really, really good. So, why do we eat dessert when we're full? Well, this brings us to the topic of psychological motivation. Psychological motivation is not based on biological needs. These are just things we want. Okay? So the first part of it is incentives theory, the pull side of motivation. These are rewards or stimuli that lure us into action. The incentive value influences the strength of the pull. So whether it's good taste with the dessert, or whether it's dressing in a way that makes you feel like you're cool, like you're one of the students at school that has trendy clothes. If you think that a hairstyle or a type of makeup makes you feel beautiful, or if you feel like wearing a certain style of clothes makes you look successful, we all have some kind of pull side of motivation. We all have something that incentivizes us toward a particular behavior. Um, now, so see if you can think of something. Why do you want good grades? Is there an incentive there? Do you want good grades to potentially get a scholarship or an award? Um, so the other psychological source of motivation is something called need for achievement. Now I'll go back to this previous slide. Oops, not that slide. Ah, oops, I am definitely not going backwards. Okay, this slide. This is a slide that can classically be done to test for need for achievement. And sometimes I do this in class. So you look at the picture here and you describe a story. Okay, what's happening, what led to the situation, what is being thought, what is wanted, what will happen. And when I have students write this story, and you can go ahead and think about the story yourself right now, pause it and think about what story would you make. Now, let's think about what some possible options are. Some people say she cheated and the professor is watching her redo the experiment. Another said these are scientists working in a lab and they've discovered the cure to HIV, or maybe now even they've discovered the cure to COVID-19. So the story that they tell reflects something that may or may not show that you have a need for achievement. The one that discovers the cure for COVID-19, that definitely describes someone who is looking for and motivated by a need for achievement. The TAT is the type of test that I just showed you. That's called the thematic aid perception test. So here are the things that we would look for in that response. Are you trying to outperform someone else, meet or surpass the standard of excellence, do something unique like find a cure, or be involved in doing something well long term, working on a research project that is going to potentially revolutionize medical treatment for schizophrenia, for example. Those things all indicate need for achievement. Now, a test for need for achievement was done. Very, very simple test, and this is another test I would do in class if we were together. I have a little ring toss game that I take out, and I have students decide where they're going to stand and toss the ring onto the pole. And so David McClellan, who was a Harvard psychologist, came up with this very, very simple test. And what he observed is that those who went close to the ring and just dropped the ring right on top of the pole would probably have a low need for achievement. Likewise, the person who goes so far away that no one would predict that they could get the ring on the pole, they probably also have a low need for achievement. But those who set themselves reasonable but difficult goals have a high need for achievement. I would guess that many of you fall into this category. So I'm not going to spend time on this. You can pause this and write this down because I do want to finish this video today. But I think the biggest difference between high and low need for achievement is that they set challenging but realistic goals, whereas low need for achievement, people are motivated by a desire to avoid failure. There's no judgment here. I'm not saying one person is better than the other, but you might notice in yourself, are you someone that sets challenging but realistic goals, or are you merely trying to avoid failure? So need for achievement is driven for some of us by intrinsic motivation. We want internal gratification. We want learning goals. We can do it well at any job that we find personally meaningful. People who are teachers, pastors, social workers, a whole bunch of people that are sort of altruistic are more likely to be motivated intrinsically. People who are in business and marketing and sales are more likely to be motivated extrinsically. And really, in reality, there is no problem with what your motivation is. The more important thing in your life is how you treat people and the respect and honor that you give to all people. But you would probably know yourself whether you're more intrinsically motivated, I think that's true for me, or extrinsically motivated. Are you someone who wants rewards, recognition? And for you, you set performance goals. You want to achieve A, B, and C. And that's great because we need people with extrinsic motivation. Think of people like Bill Gates or Elon Musk who set performance goals, and they have done a great job in business, marketing, economics. And then other psychological, psychosocial needs are the following, and this will be the end of this lesson. Some of us have a very strong need for affiliation. I took this picture here. This was actually my son's Friendsgiving at college, and this is a group of people that has a really, really strong need for affiliation. They need to be with people. They need to be socially attracting. Some people have a need for autonomy. They need to be very independent in their decision making, and then others have a need for power or dominance, influence, and directing others. You might see politicians fall into this category. You might see independent business owners having a need for autonomy, and then any of us could have the need for affiliation. And so when it comes to all of these kinds of psychosocial, biological needs, whatever they are, all of us are motivated by a combination of these needs, and that is our lesson for today. And actually, anorexia is a topic that is important, but we will not be covering it at this time. You can read a section about it in your textbook. Thank you for your attention today. I know this is 2 long videos, half hour, but I really needed to get motivation done today. Thank you so much, and I look forward to when I can see you again. Bye.